All right, A&P2 students, we are going to continue on with the digestive system. Now we're going to talk about the specific nutrients that our body cells need in order to function properly. There's actually 6 classes of them. We have our carbohydrates, we have our lipids, also called fats, we have our proteins, and then we have our vitamins, our minerals, and then our water. So those are the list, that's the list of our 6 essential nutrients, the 6 that we need in our diet in order for our body cells to function properly. So we're going to focus though on the carbohydrates, lipids or fats, and proteins in this chapter. And we will start with the carbohydrates. And so I broke this down. The textbook is going to go into a little bit more detail than I'm going to. So best to follow the objectives so you focus on what I'd be testing you on. So first, remember just a little review what carbohydrates are. They're large organic molecules. So examples would be starch and lactose and sucrose. And they're all made up of individual sugar molecules. They call them monosaccharides. And so when we chemically digest these, they will, those little bonds will be broken between the individual sugar molecules, and then we'll get these the product will be these little individual sugar molecules. And then they're the monosaccharides, and they're generally glucose, galactose, and fructose. All right, so the digestion part, and I'm going to use a little picture here. So we'll use this picture and kind of follow a carbohydrate through the digestive system. So when a carbohydrate enters the oral cavity, that's where chemical digestion is going to begin. So remember, one of the functions of the salivary glands was to produce saliva, they do produce saliva, was to produce amylase, which is an enzyme that will break down the carbohydrate called starch. So chemical digestion through salivary amylase is going to begin in the mouth. And then as the carbohydrate in the bolus comes down the esophagus and enters the stomach, we don't have any enzymes in the stomach that are going to break down carbohydrates. So our carbohydrate will pass through the stomach and then get into the duodenum and then the small intestines. And so it's in that area where we're going to have continued chemical digestion of the carbohydrates. And remember that the pancreas is going to produce amylase as well as some other enzymes. And that amylase will flow through the pancreatic duct and into the duodenum and join with the carbohydrate that's in our duodenum. And we'll have chemical digestion going on in our duodenum and small intestines. And then our small intestines, those cells that line the epithelial cells that line the small intestines, they also will produce other enzymes like lactase and sucrase that'll break down other carbohydrates. So we got a lot of chemical digestion going on in the small intestines and a little bit in the oral cavity and nothing in the stomach. All right, so once those, so we'll go back to our thing here. So we've got our chemical digestion completed. So now absorption is going to happen. So when it comes to absorption, remember, let me see if I can find that picture. There we go. So remember our absorption. We got a little picture of a glucose. We're going to say this is glucose. Absorption is going to happen in the small intestines, and so it's going to be just the individual sugar molecules that are small enough to get absorbed. So that'll be like glucose, galactose, fructose. Those will be the kind that carbohydrates that are going to be able to undergo absorption. So we will have the glucose, we'll pretend it's this little blue guy, pass through the epithelium of the small intestinal cells, or through the epithelial cells, and then it's going to enter the blood in the lamina propria. And realize this blood is going to, these are the capillaries, so these will turn into a venule and then into a vein. And it's the mesenteric veins, because those are the veins that drain blood from the intestines. So the glucose or any of the other monosaccharides are going to travel through the mesenteric veins and into the hepatic portal vein. And then from the hepatic portal vein, we're going to go into our sinusoids, and then it's where the sinusoids are, where we have the hepatocytes lining there. And the hepatocytes will take any of the galactose and fructose and convert them into glucose. And the reason they do that is because the cells in the body don't use galactose and fructose directly, they use glucose. So the liver hepatocytes within the liver will convert those nutrients into glucose. And then remember those sinusoids will eventually drain into the blood in there, will eventually drain into the central veins of those hepatic globules. And then the central vein will take that blood to the hepatic veins and then to the inferior vena cava. So now we've got the sugar in our bloodstream via absorption. And so now there's the cells of the body are going to use the carbohydrates, and they use them in different ways. So there's different fates of the glucose that we just took into our body. So it can remain in the blood as glucose, and so it'll remain in the blood. Eventually, though, it'll be taken up by a cell and be broken down for energy in that whole process of glycolysis and aerobic cellular respiration. Or one of those hepatocytes can, or even muscle cells, may take up that glucose and convert it into glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose, and then just store it in the cells. And then the other fate of glucose, if we have too much glucose, and we already have glycogen stores full, we don't need any for ourselves, then it'll be converted into fat, also specifically triglycerides, and then it'll be stored in our adipose tissue in there. So that is the carbohydrate metabolism that goes on within our bodies. So again, I just kind of summarized it in my own words and didn't go over every detail in the textbook because it was quite a lot of details. So, all right. So the next video I'll talk about protein metabolism, and then the next one we'll do lipid metabolism. So I'll see you in the next video.